It's YNK, so since I stole all of Thorin's gigs, at the very least, what you guys can do is subscribe to his YouTube channel, so go on and do it right now.
We've reached the Legends stage of the FACEIT Major London for 2018. So this is the top 16 teams playing down in the Swiss system for those last 8 spots in the tournament, which are obviously the Legends spots. And this is essentially what used to be the Major in the past, but now, obviously, we're in a scenario where week 1, what used to be the major qualifier, is now the first week of the major. So technically, we're on week 2 of the major, no matter what people may tell you online about still treating it as the major qualifier. I know it's HLTV.org. If you go on the events page and you look at a player's stats, they're actually still listing this as the major qualifier. They're not listing it in their big stats for like majors, which I can somewhat understand in terms of stats, because you don't want people to just rack up crazy scores against the Spirit or the Rogues of the world when, you know, in history, when you put that major tab, you're obviously thinking of like fucking amazing teams. But then again, there were some dog shit teams in the group stages of some of the early majors. So, I mean, one time they literally just invited a team from fucking India who hadn't done anything against Europeans. And funnily enough, actually, something mad, like got coached by Cassad or something, but more info on that in the future. Don't know why I'm pointing up that the video's not there yet, but that will come in the future in an interview. So anyway, I decided to do a video preview for this one. I often do video previews, but the reason why that's notable is I didn't do a video preview for the Challenger stage, which is much less interesting. Instead, I did that as a text piece for VP Esports, where I do all my written content, because I thought I'd mix it up a bit, you know, and also reaches more people. I don't think people want to sit through a whole video for a lot of the Challenger stage teams, so I thought, fuck it, just let people skim on a text piece. But now, since I've underrated written content in the past, primarily because I was making so much from video because of sponsorship, I thought I'll mix it up a bit of both, you know. Now, it is worth pointing out, coming to the video, not every team here is one that I've studied in depth. You know, teams like Complexity I haven't seen as much from. Windstrike, obviously, I've barely ever seen since the last major, so really not a whole lot for those teams. But here are my thoughts anyway. So I'm going to structure it the same way I did before, because I'm going to structure it according to the Swiss system. I'm going to talk, first of all, about the teams that I think are going to go 3-0, so there's 2 of those. I'm going to talk about the teams that I think will go 3-1, 3 of those. Teams that will go 3-2, 3 more of those. And then I'm going to talk about the teams that I think will get eliminated, so 8 of those, and give you some reasons for all of them. Then finally, I'll give you my very quick rundown of the first round matchups, because they're the only ones I know. Now, it is worth considering when we come to this tournament that the 5th stage, stage is difficult down to 5th round, but don't think of rounds in terms of a map. 5th round of the Swiss system is a best of 3 for the last teams to get through. So it's worth considering that will change in theory what teams make it out. Except it's very hard to predict, because obviously if a top team loses 2 best of 1s, like if Astralis loses 2 best of 1s and Navi loses 2 best of 1s, they're very highly favoured to win the best of 3. But most people aren't going to have them getting to the 5th round, because they would assume that they wouldn't lose that many best of 1s, and it's hard to know who they'll play. So people are going to think that no, they won't lose them, and therefore they won't be in that stage. So it's tough, because you might think to yourself, right, once you get to the bottom of this list, just ask yourself who would win a best of 3, but it's not necessarily going to go that way. In fact, Swiss system is notorious for not going the way you think it will. It's also a scenario where, because of all the best of 1s, you get a lot of upsets. It's very rarely the 8 best teams that make it out. And so most of this is going to be an analysis and intuition, but I did go with one crazy little pick. And once I got down to the bottom, the 3-2 teams, I did actually have to kind of like pick with gut and try to figure out which factors I consider more important. Like, it's very tough to know who will actually make it out there. I'm not a fan of this style. But anyway, the 3-0 teams, there's 2 of them. I picked Astralis and Team Liquid. Now, Astralis, I'm sure it's not a big surprise as to why I picked them. First of all, not only are they the best team in the world, not only are they still close to unbeatable. I know they've lost single maps more recently, but they weren't doing that until recently. They have an amazing map pool. So when they play in a Swiss system, you have to be a very special team, or a team with a very special map pool, to be able to get them to a map you're going to have a chance to beat them on. They've got, as we saw, even when they had to play maps like Train, which almost certainly won't be playing often in this particular phase of the tournament, they could still play it. Dust 2, they lost on, but then they came right back and they won on. They're still very good on that. what can you really play them on? Nip got them to Mirage because Nip got them to ban Train, Overpass and Cache, because they ban Cache anyway. They don't want to play Train, Overpass because those are the two strongest maps on paper of NIP. So, okay, even then it was like double overtime. It was some mad overtime game for the NIP guys. So it's tough to get wins even in Swiss system against this team, especially because they're so consistent in terms of firepower. I also actually think the recent losses they've had in the Challenger stage and at DreamHack Masters Stockholm is going to make them a bit more careful with the veto. Now they won't think that they've got all the maps in the veto. Like, they've lost Mirage versus Tyloo, North and Nip. You know, none of those are elite teams. None of those are S-class or A-class teams, really. So I think they're going to be a little bit more careful with the Mirage against teams that can play it. I think Dust 2 loss against North will make them not necessarily want to go to that in matchups that's risky, teams that are known to be good on Dust 2. So I think they will flex the veto intelligently. They will be able to get a lot of bans out of opponents on maps like Nuke, Overpass, depending on what's happening in the tournament. They'll get a lot of games on Inferno and Mirage, despite that those being two of the best maps, but they'll be careful with who they play Mirage against. And if they can get Overpass, that's obviously free money. So personally, I think they're going to cruise. I think they're going to get out 3-0. Now, Team Liquid, listen, yes, they're a solid team. Yes, they have good hype around them. I have to say the one big factor that's making me pick them here is when I contrasted them against other big teams like Na'Vi, like FaZe, I think those teams have more flaws going for them to say that they won't make it out 3-0. So therefore, Team Liquid is the only other team I can pick for my 3-0. One factor I think is underrated is their map pool has improved. I told you earlier in the year they were trying to figure out, are we playing Train? That had too many key losses on it for them. They tried obviously playing Nuke against a bunch of people. The map that they seem to have settled on to bring into the map pool along with their other good maps is Cache. And that's a map that right now is a real nice map to play because you can either force a ban out of the other team, then you get to one of the maps you like an Inferno, Mirage, or they're willing to play it against you. And I certainly think that TL will play it if it comes up. And I think they can get solid wins on that. And they've now got the game going in terms of individual play because Twists has come online, who was a little bit rocky in some of the past tournaments, that, yeah, they can actually win on Cache as well against most teams, quite frankly. Who out there is going to beat them on it? Maybe FaZe. That's even questionable. Astralis don't play it and will never play it against them. Na'Vi does not like a bit of the old Cache, mate. Mouse Sports, maybe. You know, you're getting, it's hard to see teams that are going to beat them on that particular map. So then we go to the 3-1 teams. I'm going to go ahead and say Na'Vi makes it 3-1. We've seen some issues around them in terms of results the last few months. Obviously, DreamHack Masters Stockholm was quite shocking. Then they've got these bad omens surrounding them, all these comments from Flamey, all these weird comments about like we're playing the maps that we're not good on so we can get good for the major. I'm not sure I buy that really. The loss to Ghost and North were a little bit concerning. North more so because Ghost was in a best of one. North because they got crushed. They got absolutely blown out on two maps, including Train, which they were supposed to be very good on. And quite frankly, North is a bit unconvincing on at times. All the same, they have got amazing players. These players can win you the games to get out of this group stage. They've got Simple, God, they've got Electronic, still a very good player, even if he had a little bit of a drop-off recently. They've got a strong map pool, which I think really helps you here. I also think the fact that the Train experiment didn't work in terms of picking it means that maybe they'll be a little bit more wary in terms of the opponent there because they've been undefeated on it in recent history. Overpass and Mirage, still money in the bank if they get to those. Nuke, still a nice veto bait, and they'll play it certainly if they have to against teams that they don't necessarily aren't the strongest on that map, basically everyone except Astralis. They can absolutely go ahead and just ban Dust 2 every time. They don't have to play it at this stage, and that's their biggest weakness. So just ban it every time. Get it the fuck out there, get the cash out of there, and just pick the other map that you don't want to play against the opponent. And you've got solid enough maps for people like Simple and Electronic to go to work. I think they're going to get out 3-1, and I think you're going to see them in the playoffs. I'm also going to pick FaZe Clan here. Main reason, first of all, they've got amazing players. Nico is in God mode at the moment. Olaf's really come back online. Guardian's somewhat hit and miss compared to what he was earlier in the year, but he's still a strong player. Rain, I know, had a revival of form, but still has looked a little bit rocky over the last few months generally. Carrigan, I think, is going to be very prepared for this major, very hungry for this major. He senses his chance. The map pool is a concern because they haven't yet transitioned from the map pool they had with the stand-ins to the map pool they're playing with now. So I want to see, did they play some games on Train in this particular portion of the tournament? Because that hasn't been that convincing, really. So I think instead, as long as they end up on the maps that you expect them to, as long as they play some Inferno, as long as they play some Mirage, as long as they play maybe some Cache, I think these are all maps that are doable. They'll certainly experiment with Dust 2. I'm not quite sure yet if that's going to work for them, but they're willing to go ahead with it. So I think the map pool just about's there, and especially compared to the opponents, because there's actually a lot of teams coming in this tournament with shaky or limited map pools, where you can just avoid them on 1 or 2 maps. It really diminishes their chances, and that's actually what's going to hurt some of the lesser teams in this best of 1 phase. MIBR is my last team I'm picking to come 3-1. This was a tough one. I was so tempted. It was between MIBR and Mouse Sports for me here, and I went back and forth. And the main factor ultimately for me is map pool, because I think both teams have a lot of talent. I think all the talent in all the teams isn't activated. I think in terms of best player, MIBR wins that one with Cold Zero. But then again, I think actually that Mouse Sports has better in-game leading at the moment. Even if the chemistry looks a bit off, I think someone like Sonny is a fabulous player and can absolutely do a lot of damage. But here's the thing. The map pool for MIBR, admittedly they haven't played as many top teams since Yanko came on board, but it's looking pretty solid. Like, they've worked Dust 2 into the equation. I think that can be very helpful, not least because they can force bans out of some of the other teams. They've got Mirage, they can still play that. They've revived themselves on that map, if anything, so I think that's big time for them, because I think that's a map they could end up playing a bunch in this Swiss system. They've got Inferno again. That was a map that was always there for them, but they finally managed to get the other players on board, so that's another map they might be playing a lot here. Train, they played a bit and seemed solid enough on, actually. So I know a lot of teams don't want to play Train, but that might be one that gets forced through the veto. I think they would be favoured there against most of this field. And actually, Cash is one they've been playing. Cash is one they were playing even before Yanko came on board and Tarek came on board. And I think a lot of teams will just be forced to ban it. Therefore, I think they're going to get they're going to have some of the power in the veto, and they're going to at least get the maps they want. And they themselves can just ban out whichever 2 out of the 3 of Nuke, Overpass, and Cash. So basically Nuke, and then whichever one of the other 2. So if it's Cash, if it's a very strong Cash team, Overpass if it's a Na'Vi or an Astralis. And I think as a result, they get to maps that are playable, like Duras 2, like Mirage, like Inferno. And I'm going to go ahead and say they've got the firepower for it. They've got Cold Zero. They have some legendary players at Majors. I think they get out, even though I do think they will lose at least 1 map. They might even lose 2, but I'm going to say they'll lose 1. In the 3-2, these are the last 3 teams that are getting out. First one is one that, you know what, I have a bit of confidence in. I'm not a fan of this new Mouse Sports. I don't think it's actually as good as the old Mouse Sports, even though it beats different teams and has a different map pool. But ultimately, it is a new team, it's a new look, and that actually, I think, has been throwing teams off because people approach it like the old Mouse, people play them as if the old Mouse, and crucially, people treat them as if the map pool was the old Mouse's, and they have not got the same map pool as the old Mouse. Like, first of all, they have really come back in a big way on Mirage, and Mirage right now is a map that's really up in the air. Not a lot of teams have it as their favourite map, a lot of teams it's their second or third favourite map, and as a result, there are going to be a lot of upsets on Mirage, as there already have been. Also, they've embraced Nuke again, a map that they started to go away from. I like that. Not a lot of teams in the field playing Nuke. In the Swiss system, it'll help you to force a Nuke ban out. Dust 2 is a map that they've been up and down on, but they've shown that they can play it. This is a map that seems to fit, actually, the styles of all the players they've got, because they've got so many playmakers. So I think that's a map that can be good for them. Also, a lot of other teams haven't quite figured it out yet. And actually, their trains seem decently legit again. I know for some reason they went away from it when they were with the Stickle lineup, but it's back again. So all in all, not a bad map pool there, and they can just ban out the other maps anyway. I do think they have some firepower issues. I don't think they're as good as the names look on paper, and I actually think that since a bunch of them haven't gone deep in majors before, like some of them just made a round of 8 before, that is an issue, but this isn't the stage where I think you have to worry about that. I think they still have enough players where they're going to have the confidence man for man against most of the other teams. I also think the fact that they're going to make a roster move after this tournament, like it's been rumoured that Bialy's going to come in, and a certain player I won't mention right now is going to leave the team, who I think is very good. I still think they'll perform at this one last tournament. I think everyone's going to be on their best behaviour, especially if some of them want to potentially be in a FaZe clan one day. So I think they'll perform. I think they'll get out, although I do think they'll lose at least 1 map. I'm going to go ahead and say 2 here. I think they will make it out, though. The next 2 names are borderline. Like, each of these, I could make a case for them not making it, but I'm going with a bit of intuition. And in the case of the first team, NIP, I'm going with recent form. So recent forms look much more improved, especially since Lekro took over as in-game leader, obviously getting out of the minor in first place, managing to go to top 4 at DreamHack Stockholm, even though they didn't play all the tough teams, and then managing to get out 3-0, including beating Astralis and Mirage when they were in the Swiss system of the previous stage of this tournament. So one thing I like is, first of all, the team's style looks a lot better than when Dennis was in-game leader. Then you've got the map pool, which I don't think it's as solid as it looks, But I do think that it's going to play tricks on the opponent mentally because of their history on certain maps. So their strong maps are Overpass, Train, and Mirage. I think on these maps, they can go head-to-head with a lot of teams in this field. But obviously, in an ideal world, in theory, someone could just ban those 3 maps. So this is where I think the strength will come from the fact that they, in theory, play Nuke and Cash, but they're not anywhere close to their old strengths on those maps. So as a result, I think you will see teams that are scared of Nuke and Cash vetoing it sometimes when it might not be necessary, and therefore Nip will gain the edge in some of the vetoes to get to those maps that they do want. And then I think their firepower is strong enough with this new composition. I think they're much stronger, for example, than a team like Fnatic. So I'm going to go ahead and say, actually, in terms of average firepower, I think they're pretty solid. So I'm going to say, actually, I think they make it out and they make it into the Legends stage, which would be pretty cool because obviously they weren't Legends since MLG Columbus. So over 2 years ago. Then my last team, this is one where, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and say it. This is a team where on paper, yeah, they don't make it out. There's not really a whole lot of like track record that says they make it out, but I'm willing to take a risk on this one. I'm willing to stick my neck out there to take some stick because I'm thinking of potential and the best games. I don't think this team's going to go deep. I think if they do make Legends, that's probably it for them, but I think that they can make Legends. I'm not going off pure analysis. I'm attempting a bit of prediction here. Obviously, I could have picked Fnatic. It's a team where you might say it might happen, even though they just did badly at DreamHack Stockholm. Could have gone with Hellraisers for some of the raw firepower. Could have gone with Tyloo, one of the teams I enjoy watching the most, a top 5 entertainment-wise team in the tournament. But I'm actually going to go with G2. Now, obviously, everyone's going to go, oh, you bloody fanboy and them all. Yeah, you know what? I do like a lot of the players in this team. But I also actually do think that when this team has its head on, right, it has the actual pieces to get out here. First of all, they've got Kenny S and Shocks. Now, I know what you're saying. No, they have Kenny S. Yeah, we saw him do some nut stuff at ECS, and he was very strong at ESL on Cologne. But Shocks, if you go back and watch DreamHack Valencia, where yes, they were underwhelming as a team, Shocks was on there. It was actually Kenny who had a rare off-turn. Shocks looked somewhat like the old Shocks. A playmaker, winning clutch rounds, fragging heavily, entry fragging at times, winning aim duels. This was the Shocks I want to see in this team. So I'm saying both of them come online at the same time. Not at like peak Kenny S, peak Shocks. Yeah, let's not be unrealistic. But I say they both turn up as good fraggers, and that gives you a lot of extra dimensions in this team, which then shores up the team play base and the half-decent map pool and the tactical and nade utility style. So Body's been solid enough. Smiths has proven he isn't useless. Existence fragging is a concern, but if Shocks and Kenny S are there, I think you can live with that. So they've got the tactics, they've got utility usage down, especially on their good maps. Their map pool's actually decent. They can play Dust 2, a map a lot of teams don't want to play, so that draws bans. They can play Inferno, a map a lot of people want to play. They amazingly have actually proven they can play Mirage, a map that actually Existence hasn't really been playing since you go all the way back to the days of when he was on fucking Very Games. Then, okay, what's the concern in the map pool? Well, they played Cash and they did decently enough on it against Big, okay. I think Nuke personally will be one that they'll bust out that they've been practicing secretly. I don't have inside information on this one. I'm just saying it because, first of all, Existence's teams have often been able to play or been good on that map, and they have Kenny S, who's probably the best AWPer we've ever seen on that map. So I feel like actually the map pool will end up being pretty solid. If they veto intelligently, they've got their practice in already, I think they can do it. I think they can, and now I'm saying they're going to lose 2 maps, so obviously they could lose 3 and just go out. But I'm thinking they're going to do it. I'm not just going off G2 here as well, though. A lot of the other teams that I have eliminated have such key flaws that if that's exploited, then yeah, they just go out of the tournament. So in terms of the teams eliminated, the other 8 teams, Tyloo. Now, I want to believe they're a really exciting team. I love some of the players in the squad. They're so ballsy. They're so decisive. Problem is they're too up and down. They do all that stuff and they sometimes lose. Map pool issues, I think, will be a problem for them because I actually think that because they play all the maps and because they win all the maps at home in their own region, I think they sometimes make weird mistakes in terms of vetoing and tend to just play the maps they want to play. And that is a recipe for losing extra maps than you need to in a Swiss system. Then you've got to add in, they've never done it before. It's going to be a lot of pressure. And there's comm issues. They have to speak in 3 different languages. So all in all, I'm going to say, despite being an upset team, I hope they win at least 2 maps. I hope they prove themselves. I'm going to go ahead and say they don't make it, and even the team like G2 might make it over them. I think they could also make it over G2, but you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to take G2 for this one. Hellraisers. Listen, Woxic is a fabulous player. Probably should be on a better team. Issa can be sick to watch when he goes off in games. Those are 2 players who can go really ham. You know what, though? They don't tend to turn up at the same time, mainly because sometimes they look like the same player when they're going off. I think they're a bit too one-dimensional in terms of playing style, which is pretty loose. I think the map pool can be figured out. It's hard to get wins off top teams when they figure out your map pool. I think a lot of teams have just been willing to play them on maps that both teams are comfortable on. So I think all in all, I don't see them getting the 3 wins. They could get 2 for sure. I don't think they're going to get the 3 though. And there's also a scenario where if Woxic or Issa doesn't turn up, they get banged out and maybe they get 1 win, or God forbid they end up 0-3. Luckily, there's enough bad teams at this top 16 due to how ass the major format is that I don't think they're going to end up in 0-3. I think they'll probably get at least 1 win and hopefully come close in a minimum 1 more game. I'm actually saying Fnatic doesn't make it because there's a lot of hype around them from practice and scrims. I don't buy it personally. I think they lack firepower. I think Flusher's been absolute ass for the last few months. I think Draken's a player I don't buy to be able to fit in the system, and I don't think his option's been very good so far. They've relied a lot on JW, who's still an up and down player and is someone where actually, if they don't have the passive lurking of Flusher, if they don't have consistent AWPing from Draken, him doing all that crazy shit actually doesn't work on its own. It needs a team working with it and often shoring up his weaknesses just as he creates a shore up for their weakness in terms of being unpredictable. I don't think their map pool is certain enough. I haven't seen enough to show me that they've got like a solid 4. They can play a bunch of maps, but then again, this is another problem. What map are they really good on? I don't think there's many that they're world beaters on. So quite frankly, I'm saying Fnatic goes out here. The Legends streak finishes. Players like Flusher and JW don't make it to Legends. Tough shit. Sorry. They still have Crims, who is a fabulous player, but even he's looking a bit off the last few months. And I'm just thinking, I'm just down on Fnatic generally. Right, let me see. There's 5 more teams. So big. I think they're a solid team, but I think they lack firepower anyway. I think ESL Cologne was a mixture of a surprise factor, people not knowing their map pool, certain players overperforming. That's you, Nex. Well, without Nex, and this is a major, he tends not to turn up to him, didn't turn up to last week. I think without Nex, they have no chance. So I think they're done at that point. Smoothie can do what he wants. Tabson's still a very strong player. That ain't going to be enough. Their map pool's solid, but first of all, I don't think they're gods on any maps. I think they're interesting on Dust 2 and Cash. And I think they will actually get baited into trying some clever veto outplays, because one thing about God B in the modern day of CSGO is he reminds me of people like Snappy, who always think their map pool is much stronger than it is. Not just like wide and got some good ones. They often think it's deep on like 5 maps. And so they tend to do some mistakes in the veto and end up playing a silly map that they're not actually that sick on. So I see that potentially happening here and costing them at least 1 victory. Then you got Vega Squadron. Listen, they're another fun team to watch. I'm not a believer in that style working 3 out of 5 times, though, especially against this level of competition if you get to the best of 3. I don't think they've got any chance in that best of 3. They can get the odd team, they can get someone, but the problem is there's teams here who are going to have a better idea of their map pool, because remember, they're a new team again. The first few times they did it, they were a new squad, no one had played them before. Now they're a new team again because there's no mates. Now the chopper lineup you've got to work with. There's not a lot of demos to go off recently. And also, there are teams who can just match that chaotic style. Fnatic, possibly. Mouse Sports, MIBR, FaZe Clan, NIP. I think all these teams could actually do well against them. I think if they play any 3 of those teams, they lose to 2 of them, as far as I'm concerned. Cloud9. You know what? I don't think Cloud9 actually goes 0-3. Yeah, I'll say it. I think they somehow win a game, because you know what? They've still got Automatic and Rush. Automatic can be a really strong fragger. Rush is a solid player. Golden's had time to boot camp, to work on shit, to get them on point on some of the maps. Sticko's just going to play supportive. Skadoodle can come alive for 1 game. I think they've got it in them to win 1 game and not get eliminated 0-3. So the 0-3 teams are complexity and win strike. I'm saying Call goes 0-3. I haven't seen enough from them generally to believe in them. They've got inexperienced players who I think will flounder under the big lights. They only played Inferno in the last stage. Generally, I just don't see what aspects would point to them doing better than this.Maybe they win a map, sure. Maybe they even win 2. Maybe I just don't know anything, but I can't see a world in which they're making Legends. Last team, obviously, is the ex-Quantum Bellator Fire Winstrike. They're a terrible team. They've done nothing in the recent period of time. Sure, that makes them a black box, but they're also a black box full of fucking garbage. So 0-3, they're not making it out. Right, here are the first round matchups. I think Vega Squadron beats Cloud9. I think it's tough to know what to do if you're Cloud9. You've never played a team like that. I think FaZe beats Big. I think actually FaZe is going to do a better job with the veto here. I think they've got better firepower. I think they want revenge for Cologne. I think Astralis beats Na'Vi. Na'Vi's in a bit of a slump right now. Hard to see what maps Na'Vi's going to win on them against, because Astralis can selectively veto, and I do not think we'll be ending up on Mirage. MIBR will beat Tai Lu. That's actually a close one. Really depends on map. But again, I'm questionable about how good Tai Lu's map veto is and how much they're going to know about MIBR. So actually, I'll say MIBR's firepower wins that one. NIP will beat Mouse Spots in this match. because even though generally, I'm not picking them as like a top team, I think actually in that particular matchup, I could see NIP winning it. I think Mousesports is the better team overall, but I think NIP is just looking in good form. Their map pool is good enough that I think they can get it where it wants to be. I think Team Liquid beats Windstrike. Come on, it's Team Liquid, they're Windstrike. I don't really give a fuck about this one. I think G2 is going to beat Hellraisers. I know that the firepower of this own Woxic is scary, but the Hellraisers map pool is pretty limited. And as I say, if something like Nuke has come online, I think G2's got the ability to flex in that map pool and they'll edge it out. Finally, I think Fnatic beats Complexity. They've just got better players, they're a better team, more experience, probably have a better map pool. We can't really know yet. We have to see Complexity play a better team. So there we go. Those are my 8 teams making it and how many wins they're going to get. And those are my 8 teams going home to the minor or playing in week 1 of the next major if Valve doesn't improve the format. This video was kindly supported by Gardner Wilson, Dean Tanglis, Alex Adams, Eddie Wingfors, Andreas Snazore Westerlund, godawfulwasteofspace, Kyla Harris, Travis Greb, James Harding, Daniel Yordanov, VeXii, Robert Baxter, and a special thanks goes out to Jerky's Minion. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest to appear in my content? Do you want to ask me a question in my monthly AMA? Do you want teasers for upcoming content and guests? Want to take part in a discussion about esports with me? Put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today. Link in the description box.